Hi, it's Julia Ray, and this is A Deeper Look. I believe the most important stories are the ones deep within us. The stories that make us feel alone, yet connect us when we're brave enough to tell them. Tune in every Wednesday to dive into the deep end together. Hi, everyone. It's Julia Ray, and I am thrilled to welcome Mallory Hagan to A Deeper Look. Mallory is a brand strategist, body positivity advocate, and former congressional candidate. She holds a degree from the Fashion Institute of Technology in advertising, marketing, and communications. And no big deal, she was crowned Miss America in 2013. I got to know and meet Mallory when I lived in New York City. Her journey has been fascinating and inspiring for me to watch. The crown is cool, but my favorite part of seeing Mallory's story unfold over the years is witnessing the strength, integrity, and vulnerability with which she moves through life, no matter what has been thrown her way. Mallory, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me. What a welcome.
I want to start with, did you dream of becoming Miss America when you were a little girl?
Oh, goodness. No, that's not really something I ever saw in my realm of possibility, but I would be remiss if I didn't say that my mother and grandmother were in some way involved in the program throughout my childhood, as both of them were dance educators. So they would choreograph for local competitions. So it wasn't something that was really far away from me, but I certainly did not think that I would be the person to walk across that stage, much less, much less win. But I'm really grateful for that opportunity and for all the years that I spent as a part of the program.
For those that aren't familiar with the program and probably just see it for, the surface level thing that it gets the reputation of being, can you talk about what it actually took to become Miss America and your journey and process through the program?
Yes, I think most people just see what happens on television and that one night every year, whether it's on ABC or NBC or whatever programming we happen to have in that time frame. But Miss America is an opportunity for young women to earn scholarship money. One of the largest opportunities for scholarship dollars to women in America. I won 73,000-ish over the course of my time competing, and Miss America is really about being the best version of yourself, which is why we have the separate categories that some may think are frivolous, but it's really about showcasing intellect through a 10-minute long interview, being able to showcase poise under pressure when you're on television and there are 15 million people watching, about having a talent, or rather the dedication to pursue something and become good at it. So all of the categories of Miss America have underlying meaning, and it's really about young women pushing themselves to be the best version of themselves that they can be. And what's most interesting to me is that usually by the time someone has made it to the Miss America stage, any one of those women would do a fantastic job in the role. But being Miss America is a year-long journey where you're traveling day in and day out to different cities, sometimes for partners for the Miss America organization. During my year, I was the national ambassador for Children's Miracle Network hospitals. So I traveled to hospitals all around the country. But I was also an advocate for child sexual abuse prevention, working with national and international organizations to lobby Congress on behalf of that cause. So there's a lot that goes into it, and there's a lot of opportunity that it presents to the women who participate, and you certainly do not have to win in order for those opportunities and that networking to present itself.
Yeah, I think it's so much more than that one night on television, as you so eloquently stated. I think there's also so many misconceptions about the women that compete and them not supporting one another. I know when I competed, I found the opposite to be true. Can you talk about your experience and how that shaped who you were in competition itself?
Absolutely. I think one of the things I'm really proud of, another former Miss New York and one of my best friends, she's actually officiating my wedding in a few weeks. Claire won Miss New York and I was first runner up. And people told us that we would not like each other. Like behind the scenes, they were like, you're each other's number one competition. You're going to hate her. Like just really negative sort of input coming from outside sources. And I know that you know that experience. And I found the exact opposite to be true. And in fact, many people have seen Hannah Wright or Hannah Nealman on Instagram and TikTok, or better known as Ballerina Farm. But it was myself, Claire, and Hannah. We were the top 3 that competed the first year. And we all just gravitated towards each other. I think the thing that this program does, like I said, is it encourages women to be the best version of themselves. And with that comes immense confidence. And the more confident you are, the easier it is for you to be yourself among other women who are also building themselves up. And so what I have found over the course of now that I've been involved 20 plus years, is that the type of women that this program attracts makes it really easy to form lifelong friendships and bonds. And I'm really proud to say there are, I think, like 12 of my Miss America class coming to my wedding a full decade later. And then my best friend is someone who beat me, quote unquote, the first time, and she's going to be officiating. So it just speaks to the lifelong friendships that you can create through it.
Yeah, I think people think and assume that this attracts catty women or would bring out a catty competitive nature. But I think what you said, it actually fosters confidence in a really healthy way, because we're actually just getting to know and put forth our best selves as we journey through the program. So I think you've summed it up so perfectly. And I don't want to ignore the talent portion, because your talent at Miss America, I was actually there in Las Vegas. And I have to tell you, there are certain videos that I turn to before I perform, or I need like energy and to be reinvigorated. And Bruno Mars' halftime show, Super Bowl halftime show, is up there for me. But your talent at Miss America is up there for me. And
That's so funny.
It's just so electrifying. And I think you really broke the mold, because at least in my opinion, talent had been more traditional up until you came on that stage with that dance. And you really said, no, let me make this an opportunity to showcase who I am and my personality. And it worked, obviously. But I didn't list that in your intro, but you are a massively talented dancer. And I think people also underestimate that portion of competition and how hard these women work to present that talent, even though it's just a minute and 30 seconds of that night.
Yes, I can attest that I spent hours, because that dance was so hard for me at that time. I was no longer a daily dancing dancer. At 24, I was not in the studio all the time, so I had to like rent studios in New York, as you know how that goes. I was at Ripley Greer, and I shout out to Shay Sullivan and my mother, who helped me pull that choreography together. But moreover, the lesson is that I would rent a studio for an hour for 1 8 count, and like just drill one single 8 count for an hour, because I couldn't do it. When Shay gave me the choreography, I was like, it's too fast. So I think that's the stuff that people don't really see. It's like, I must have spent, hundreds of dollars renting dance studios so I could get down individual 8 counts, not to mention time on the treadmill so I could get through a minute and a half of what felt like a sprint.
It was worth it. So you worked so hard to achieve this goal, this epic goal. It happens. You're one of so few that can claim this title. You made your dream come true. How did it feel? And I'd love to know, like, on a micro level, how it felt in the moment, but then at a macro level throughout your year being Miss America. How did it feel?
The micro level, that moment was really surreal. I haven't shared often that my mother was a teen mom. My parents were, fresh out of high school when I came along, and there were members of our family who really thought that they might choose a different path, and sort of encourage them to do so, to not have a child. And, being the advocate for women's reproductive health I say still, if she would have made that choice, that would have been for her. But my mom said, what if I have Miss America in my belly? Those words came out of her mouth to my grandmother and my great grandmother. And so I was standing on stage really just soaking in how many different incredible pieces of all these different puzzles had to come together for that moment, and how hard my parents worked to break generational cycles in our family of abuse and trauma so that I had the opportunities that I had. And so that's really what I was standing there feeling, is like, oh my God, my parents did it. Like, we did it, we made something of me. And on a macro level, just throughout the year, I was really grateful for the opportunities to travel and to meet new people and to create those small moments from town to town, but I was also kind of sad. I mean, it's a long year. You're alone by yourself. There's all these weird, archaic rules that they sort of placed on you at that time frame. Things are different now, but yeah, so it's like this, these highs and lows of really cool moments, like going to the Vanity Fair after party of the White House Correspondents' Dinner and standing in a room with every A-list celebrity you can think of, but also being told that, your father's not allowed in your hotel room because no men are allowed to be around you. Like, just weird stuff, So it was a wonderful year, but it also came with some really weird things. And it's easier to look back and sort of laugh at those things now and be grateful that the organization has shifted as such that women are treated like the women that they are.
I mean, speaking of the organization shifting and how archaic it was at the time that you were Miss America, and for a few years, several years after, you were at the center of a storm when emails between the CEO of Miss America at the time, Sam Haskell, and others in positions of power at the organization were leaked. I'm not super interested in what happened. I'm far more interested in how you handled it and how it affected you. But for our listeners that aren't familiar, can you walk us through what happened and what those emails contained for context's sake?
Sure. So, there was what I thought was a powerful man at the helm of the Miss America organization. He sort of touted himself as this very powerful figure in Hollywood, and that made all of this feel really heavy. So for 4 years post my time at Miss America, I knew that he was ostracizing me, making sure that people didn't work with me, actively trying to ruin my business, and wouldn't allow people to speak to me, wouldn't allow Miss Americas to interact with me. And so it turns out that a lot of that was documented via email, and those things came out. And so it was really validating for those things to finally be public. He had sort of spun this, like, I'm disgruntled, I couldn't make anything of myself, and I blame him for it, and that's why I'm upset. Very classic narcissistic behavior, just so we're clear. But it did make me feel crazy. For 4 years, between the ages of 24 and 28, this was happening. And I look back and I'm like, I don't know many 24-year-olds who would know how to deal with a 60-year-old plus man literally trying to ruin their life at every corner that they turned, trying to take their friends away from them, this thing that you had earned, trying to take that away. So it was a lot, but when it all came out, it was validating. And so many people shared with me that, he had told them, or someone had told them not to interact with me. And so it just, suddenly you're like, okay, well, at least people know that I'm not super crazy, that this was really happening. But it did help me channel that leadership, I guess, in the moment with the Miss America organization, that leadership that we all had in, getting him and others on that board of directors to resign. It helped me channel that into politics and to running for office. And so while I was really distraught over the 4 years that this was happening to me, honestly, everything happens for a reason. I would not be in the space that I am today and would not have the experiences that I've had today if all of that hadn't happened. So that's what it was.
I can't wait to dive deeper into your political life and how you've gotten there and what you're doing now. And I think it's just so indicative of the person that you are, that's the space you have found yourself in after something as traumatic as this. I mean, as you said, how does a young woman who, by the way, Mallory Heights Hagan, Miss America 2013, like was ready to light the world on fire, right? And that's where you should have been living. And unfortunately, because of this man who was trying to ruin your life, that's not really the space that you were in. And it's sad for me to hear that story. I can attest, I was one of the people that was told not to interact with you anymore. And it's also not missed on me that here's a female empowerment organization that was being run by misogynistic, power-hungry men at the end of the day. How did it feel? You know, you talked about being validating, but how did it feel when you did see those emails for the first time? Like, I have to imagine there was, yes, the validation, but also just, I don't know, maybe it was just validation. Can you tell me how it felt when you first saw those?
It was validation. It was also, I mean, it was really hard. There was talk about my weight. There was talk about my romantic encounters, intimacy. And, you know, it's one thing to read those things or to know that those things were happening and then to finally see them in black and white. It's another thing to know that my father and my grandparents are also reading those things flashed across news headlines like, Good Morning America reports that Sam Haskell said XYZ about me. And so that part was really hard. And I have experienced assault in my life. And for some reason, that time frame elicited the same like emotions and like bodily response, just seeing all of that in the news. And also knowing that I had to sort of just pull up the big girl panties and keep moving and like do something about it versus sitting at home and being like, oh my God, I can't believe all of this is out there. I sort of had to take the focus away from how I was feeling so that we could create some change. Because as you know, in massive organizations like this with such brand identity, there's a lot of things that organizations and people can get away with. And what was happening at that time is it was the holidays when all this came to light. And I think what Sam and that board thought was going to happen is that they were just going to say, oh, we're going to take a little break and hope that all the news died down and then nothing would have changed. And so for me, I had to sort of push some of those feelings aside and just say, we have to put the gas on this because they need to go. And so sort of revving up versus crawling into the hole that I felt like being in.
One of my questions that I was dying to ask you was, how did you find the strength? It sounds like you found the strength by actually focusing outward instead of inward, because I think anyone would be paralyzed given the information that came to light. And again, like you said, you became news fodder, and many personal things and vulgar statements about you were news fodder. And so it's really interesting to me to hear that you found strength by focusing outward and trying to focus on how to move forward. Was there anything else that helped you? Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, I think part of it, though, was knowing that I wasn't the only one. I was getting the attention, but it wasn't just me. And I knew that it was so much deeper than just what was written in the emails. And it was pervasive among so many of the people who volunteered for the program. They had been sold on this concept from him. And so I knew that there were other young women who had experienced what I was experiencing, just at more of a micro level. And their names weren't up there, right? But they had experienced something similar. And so it was more of just like this collective, we can't stand for this. As you said, in a women's empowerment program, we should be empowering women, not tearing them down for any and everything that we think is quote unquote wrong with them. So but it would also be disingenuous to not say that my parents have been my biggest supporters and cheerleaders, and I'm eternally grateful to them and their support during that time because they propped me up big time.
I bet. And I've gotten to know your parents just through what you posted of them, and they just seem like it makes total sense that they raised Mallory Hagan. I also think what you said about, maybe you were and your name were the catalyst and you were the conduit for this change, right? Mm-hmm. But this was about something bigger than you. And also sharing this, traumatic experience for yourself led to that change. And that's really what this podcast is about, is sharing the stories that actually make us feel alone, but connect us when we're brave enough to tell them. That's the tagline of this show. And so I think it's evident in your story that you've taken that tagline as your life motto. You have shared yourself and in the service of others, which I think has probably led to a really fulfilling journey for you, I imagine, because I think when we work in service to others, that is the road to fulfillment. But I think very few women can relate to being Miss America, and fewer can relate to have their name being plastered in defamatory headlines.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness.
You know, would you say to someone, because I think many have experienced bullying and backstabbing, and many have been paralyzed by those experiences, what would you say to someone who never got the chance to tangibly speak out and move on the way you did?
Oh, that's tough. There are so many things, you know, context really matters. But one thing that I've really held on to in my life is that other people's actions are a reflection of them and not me. And other people's projections are a reflection of them and what's going on with them internally, not me. You know, people over time have shifted things that I've said or done in an effort to make me look bad, right? But I go to my parents, I go to my friends, and I'm like, just so we're clear, like, this is what's happening, right? Like, I didn't do what this, okay, I'm just making sure. And I think that's important too. It's like, do you have people in your life who will hold you accountable if you are the problem? And I'm not saying I never have been, I certainly have, but for me, the thing I have to hold on to in every scenario, and this is day-to-day encounters, this is being at the grocery store with somebody who's in a bad mood on the other side of the checkout line, to life with my partner, to, you know, more major issues. It's people are reacting to their own world that's going on inside their own head. And the sooner that we realize, like, that's a reflection of them and what's going on with them, and not take those things personally, that's the only way I know how to move through life at this point. Like, I gotta take care of what's going on right here.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. And I think it's a powerful way to protect your inner peace, because I imagine, you know, I've been through a totally different traumatic experience with people in power, but to find your inner peace, you do have to kind of understand that everyone's working from their own place and their own trauma, really, and their own world. And so I think that's an important reminder for all of us. You have displayed such resilience. I think that's just evident in this story alone. But your ability to forge a new path has always amazed me. You found yourself wearing some different hats and taking different turns than I think you probably imagined you would. What has been the most rewarding part about shifting gears and saying yes to the next thing?
Well, for me, it's saying yes to the next step, no matter what that step is always proving to myself that I can do it if I just try. Not being held back by my own limiting beliefs or my own imposter syndrome. When I was asked to run for Congress shortly after this whole email scandal blew up, I was so afraid of that. I was so afraid to say yes because I didn't feel smart enough. I didn't feel like people would take me seriously, you know, all of these things. But I was 29 years old with more life experience than most people have in their, you know, pinky finger. And so I was like, maybe I should say yes. And when I did, it was the most rewarding thing to be able to use that resilience and that ability to look outward in order to be a voice for people in my community and in my state. And traveling around the deepest parts of Alabama, the most rural places here, and learning people's stories and being able to amplify some of the issues that were happening in our state and still are happening, you be able to amplify those things based on the title of Miss America. Being able to use that to get into the news was really rewarding for me. And being able to inspire young people to step into their communities and run as well, really, really feel so proud and honored to have had that opportunity and then to have done it again in 2022.
Yeah, it's been so cool to to sit and watch your journey through politics. I want to get deeper into that, but I have to ask this question because it just came to mind hearing you speak about politics and what that looks like for you. What similarities have you found between pageantry and politics?
There are a ton. There are a ton. I think for me, and I understand not everyone gets into politics because they have good intentions, but for me, the similarity has been to be a champion of some cause that you care about, whether through Miss America, it was child abuse prevention. On the campaign trail, it was focusing more on quality education, access to healthcare, and frankly, human rights here in Alabama. That's a major similarity as sort of my internal driver in both spaces. But some of the more glaring ones are, people are very concerned about what you're wearing and what your hair looks like and who you're relating to. And, oh my God, I can't believe you said that. Now we got to say this, So lots of, external opinions about who you should be and what you should do. And quite frankly, having been Miss America and competed for so long gave me a different skill set to be able to discern whose opinions I needed to listen to and who had my best interest at heart, but also the state's best interest at heart. So I think having that time frame in the Miss America organization gave me the skills to know how to be my best self and how to present my best self. And that's hard for a lot of first-time candidates.
I can imagine because I remember when I competed, just the amount of advice that you're getting, it just comes at you in tsunami waves. I think, yes, exactly. What is that toolbox? What does that toolbox look like or skill set for somebody listening out there that maybe, I think so many of us can get addicted to external validation, especially in the social media world that we live in. What does your toolbox look like to remind yourself of who you are and listen to your own inner voice over a lot of these external factors?
I think for me, the toolbox has always been having a very close-knit community of both family and friends who, like I said, will hold me accountable, but also will be honest with me. So that's one toolbox. I think having those close friendships and relationships with people who care about you and care about your well-being as they give you advice or help you navigate something. And then the other is, are we listening to people who aren't in places we want to be? And I know some form of that is a meme around the internet, but truly, the opinion of someone who is not on your path, has never been there before, doesn't understand what you're doing, it's less valid to me. So I try and look for those beacons of people who are doing things I want to be doing and perhaps seek out advice from them. But I have to think about that a lot. If you're not somewhere I want to be, then I respectfully decline your unsolicited advice or opinion. I look at comments on the internet, but still, I'm still human.
Well, aren't we all? I think all of us can be reminded that what we read on the internet shouldn't be taken as seriously as sometimes it's felt when it's read in an isolating incident. You share so much of yourself and your political views online, so I'm sure those comments run rampant sometimes from people on the internet. But how do you choose to share what you share on the internet? And also, how do you respond to trolls, especially when it comes to the political realm, right? I mean, that's really the most divisive slice of the internet.
So I choose to talk about Alabama politics. Sometimes talking more about federal issues, but I choose to talk about Alabama politics on my social media channels at this point because we have a lack of media coverage when it comes to what's happening at our state house and in Montgomery. Not everybody's watching traditional news and not everybody's watching local news. And that's really honestly the only place where people are talking about some of these insane pieces of legislation that are happening in Montgomery, and they're getting passed because the general public doesn't know about them, doesn't know how to help, doesn't know who to contact. And so I made a very distinct choice to focus in on legislation that's happening, let people know what the bill is about and who they need to contact in order to potentially stop it, or at minimum slow it down until there's a better solution on the table. So that's why I made that choice. Just kind of felt like we were at a loss for voices in our state about what was going on. And I'm really proud to say that just this past week, we decided, myself and a group of other influencers in the state of Alabama decided to sort of band together to share information, to make sure we're all talking about these things. Because for some reason, Florida passes some crazy piece of legislation and the national media goes on and on about it. But Alabama doesn't quite get that same recognition, or I shouldn't say recognition. It's not necessarily good things that they're talking about, but you know what I'm saying. So that's why I choose those things. And as far as handling comments, I say again, if a person is not in a place where I want to be, then I don't carry the weight of what they say too heavily.
I love that. I'm going to take that with me today for sure. I think it's so important that you're sharing it in this way, because I think a lot of young people kind of tap out or opt out on politics, especially now, because it is so divisive. But also it feels so complicated and so misrepresented often. And so I really commend you for your efforts, and thank you for even putting together this group of influencers, because I think the more we talk about it, the more change that can come. So yeah, thank you. Will you consider running again, or right now is your political chapter on hold?
I'm only 35, so I'm just now eligible to run for president. No, I don't know. I said I'm getting married. We are hoping to add to our family. We have 2 boys already, and so right now in this particular season, that feels like where I should place my focus and energy, and that's where I want to place my focus and energy. I won't say that I won't in the future, but I would like to turn my efforts more toward, as you said, young people sort of tapping out. I've been putting together some thoughts around doing more of like a college speaking tour and talking to young people about like why they have to vote and why it's important, and sort of relating to them on the concept of this all feels really like a lot. I get it. We were never meant to have this much information at our fingertips. We were never meant to be so inundated with just bad news all the time. But we have a responsibility and an obligation to ourselves and our peers and our communities to participate. And so I think I'd like to spend my focus there for just a little bit.
I think that is so crucial. I just talked to a content creator on the pod named Quigley, and she's a fashion influencer and musician and artist, and she has a massive following. And she was talking about the dilemma of the pressure from followers for content creators to immediately comment on politically charged current events. And I would love to hear your opinion, because I think I have to imagine there is a line between advocacy and irresponsibility, like irresponsibly talking on something that you're actually not that well educated on. I actually personally struggle with this. When do you speak up? And I think it's why we need more people like you. But what is your commentary on that issue?
I think if it is not in the realm of someone's normal content, it is perfectly, first of all, no one owes us anything. No one that does anything on the internet owes anyone anything else. I do feel like those who have large followings have an opportunity to say things like, you need to vote. They don't have to say who you have to vote for, but like using their platforms for smart political gain or social commentary, I think is really helpful. And I appreciate it when content creators do that, especially if it's not in the realm of the content that they already create. A good example that comes to mind for me recently is Michaela on TikTok, who does makeup. People just hounding her in the comments to make commentary about something that she talks about makeup. Like, why do you care what her thoughts are on an issue? Now, would it be great if she said, hey guys, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world. I hope you're staying I hope you're staying informed about what's going on, and you're registered to vote and you know about your voice. But like her exact commentary on anything, I don't need it. What I want from her is which highlighter I should be using for my cheeks. And so that's where I draw the line. Like if it's something that they normally talk about, yeah, then okay, that makes sense to sort of say, what are you thinking about this? But this insane like entitlement of followers to demand what someone does in front of a camera is just really weird to me. So yeah.
That it is. I'm comforted to hear your answer because that was my thought process. I was like, I think we should let them do what they want. But that's actually why I think what your hopefully next chapter looks like in this work that you're doing. I think having more people like you to point to and to send people to become more well educated on these issues is a great path for influencers that are doing makeup, creating fashion blogs, to point to and say, like, here are some accounts you can go to get more information. And I think that's a valuable resource that we do need in these very sometimes often scary times that we live in.
Yes, agreed. Scary is the good word. A good word.
Yeah. Well, on that note, actually not on that note at all, let's go and talk about your personal life and how full it is now, and you're getting married. It's so exciting. Can you talk about where you are now and like whether you imagined how your life turned out and what it looks like now?
Wow. If I imagined this, I hoped for it. I prayed for it. But I'm so happy. I met Kevin almost 2 years ago exactly. And I think at this age knew pretty quickly, I had dated a lot. I've lived in a lot of places. I've met a lot of people, and he is just so special. And so I felt really lucky to meet him and sort of have that knowing as quickly as I did. And he brought two smart, funny, hilarious, creative little boys into my life. And so this new season of being a parent is one that I wasn't expecting, but I'm loving in every way. And I'm just really excited about the life that we're building together and what that will look like, a year, 5 years, 20 years from now. It's really special. And you're kind of on the same path.
Yeah, I am getting married.
I don't think you're getting married to Kevin, but I know you're getting married.
We are not sister wives.
Yeah.
But yeah, I am getting married later this year, so very much on that path and know the knowing, like you did with Kevin. I knew with Matt very early on. And it's nice to I have found a partner who understands and so lifts me up in my endeavors, which I didn't expect and had never experienced before. And it sounds like you found that in Kevin.
Yes. Yeah, it's so important. Until I've had some positive relationships. I don't want to speak like I've never had anything like this before, but the level that he supports me, I realized that I had dated some people, especially in recent years, when perhaps I wasn't as confident in myself as I should have been. I had been around some men who I realize now at every turn were looking for a way to sort of tear me down. Like, I can't believe you think you're going to do that. That kind of thing. Versus, this just absolute positivity and optimism from Kevin that's like, yeah, absolutely. You're going to do that? Of course you are, And so it feels really good to have met someone who does not try to in any way dim my shine. And I didn't realize how much I had been around that until I had him in front of me.
And you're such a successful and empowered woman, but even women like you need at the end of the day, when you kick your feet up, a partner that's going to say, like, keep going. You know, we all need that in our lives. So I'm so happy for you that you found that. And now you are stepping into this motherhood role that you didn't expect. What do you hope to illuminate and like hope that your children and future children learn from you?
Oh, I hope they learn a lot of things. I will say I didn't realize how much stepping into parenthood would make me reevaluate my own childhood. I find myself on a daily basis thinking about what I was doing and thinking and feeling when I was 8 or when I was 6, and how are we honoring their feelings while also providing structure and boundaries. But I mean, I guess one of the things I really hope that they learn from me, which Kevin embodies as well, is like fierce advocacy for others and community, and it matters, and we will not be people who are only concerned with our own backyard. We really want to raise them to be humans who look around and go, what's wrong and how can I be a part of changing it, versus, oh man, that sucks, and walking the other direction. And learning how to balance that trait with taking care of themselves and their own lives as well.
So interesting, because it sounds like the pillars that you and Kevin are focusing on in parenthood are mimicking, or the same as the pillars that in a book that I'm reading right now, which is by Oprah and Arthur Brooks, who's a professor at Harvard, on happiness. And it's really a going back to the times, pre-social media, pre this overwhelming connection that is social media, of family, friends, faith, and service to others. And that actually is the thing that leads to a happy life. So it sounds like you don't need this book, but
I would love to read this book. I'm sure we would love to read
it's
I'm
yeah,
sure
it's
there's
called
something to learn.
yeah. Well, it sounds like you guys are already on the right path, which is not shocking to me. It stuck out to me that you said, honoring their feelings and emotions while still providing boundaries. And I feel like consistently throughout hearing your story today, that's something that you've done. I don't know if it was natural, if it came naturally to you, but it sounds like something that you've done throughout the ups and downs that you've lived through.
I wish I could say that was true. Maybe I projected that. I mean, my downs have been really down,
Yeah.
There were some really hard times where I didn't know how to handle all the things that were hurting me at the same time. I didn't, I didn't talk about this earlier, but I didn't realize that I experienced child sexual abuse until I was actually in my year as Miss America. And so that added a whole nother layer of like, suddenly now I'm realizing that I experienced this thing that I'm out here advocating for the prevention of, but it just like all these layers, right? So in addition to years after Miss America being tumultuous because of the experience with leadership, it was also tumultuous internally because I was dealing with something that I didn't really know how to deal with. And so, yeah, I don't know that I did those things naturally, but I am really hoping that we're providing tools for our boys to be able to handle when life gets really hard. Because I don't know that I had those tools, to no one's fault, but I don't know that I had the tools to take care of my inner emotional self for a while, and that took some work. And I'd really like for them to skip those parts. Awesome.
Yeah, and hearing you say that, it feels so harrowing to think of you as Miss America and needing to put on this face and this crown and this facade, if you will, throughout your year while you were internally dealing with such turmoil, and also just coming to terms with this major realization for yourself. Did you find that manifested in any way during your year? And I'm sure after, maybe when you had a second to just take a breath, because Miss America, your year, you don't really have an opportunity to just breathe.
Yeah. No, it certainly did. I mean, it manifested in a lot of different ways. And for a while I was really ashamed about how those things manifested for me. But very recently, I've done a lot of work on like, you were a kid, and I think 24 is a kid. Like, we now know that our frontal lobes are not developed at 24. They thought they were, but they're not. That I was a kid who was dealing with a lot of different factors at once. And I have grace for her. You know, for a while, I think I carried a lot of shame and guilt. And now I look back and say, I was doing what I knew how to do with the tools I had. And the fact that I survived it is just good enough at this point. But that's why parenting in this way is really important. First of all, creating good humans in general, and then creating humans who don't cause the type of pain and turmoil that I have fallen victim to / survived.
I think shame, I've learned, is one of the heaviest emotions to carry. And so combating that with grace for yourself is, I think, probably one of the most powerful tools and weapons against shame. So I'm glad that you've found that in your life. I feel like you've given me, and I know our listeners, so many takeaways in this conversation. I thank you so much for sharing so many parts of you. And I have always and will continue to admire you. And I can't wait to see photos of your wedding and you as a beaming bride. And I just want to thank you for talking about what it took to stand tall and stay bold, because I feel like you embody that for me. Thank you.
I'm so happy to see you.
Yes, likewise.
I'm so happy to have done it. And let's not make it so long for the next time. I also look forward to seeing your beautiful photos as a beaming bride. But I hope to talk to you before that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. If you are loving these conversations, please share with a friend or 5 and leave me a review, because I would love to hear your feedback. And if you have an idea for a future guest, head on over to our Instagram @DeeperLookPod and comment who you'd like to get to know on a deeper level. New episodes drop every Wednesday. I'll see you next week on A Deeper Look.